Hey folks, Noah's MMA here. Welcome to the channel. Today I want to talk about Conor McGregor versus Michael Chandler. So you might know that Conor put out a video of him at a restaurant sipping on wine, talking about the possibility of fighting Michael Chandler. So far, this is very vague. Conor puts out a lot of content, sort of keeping us in the loop and keeping us at the edge of our seats, wondering if he's going to fight. And being a Conor fan, if you're a Conor fan, this did get me kind of excited. The dude hasn't fought in a few years, and it's sort of up in the air whether or not he'll ever fight again. I think he's doing it as a leverage ploy. I don't think that it's in paper. The UFC hasn't come out and said, this fight is happening. So here's how I view the situation. I think that there is no fight signed. I think Conor McGregor, is doing this to get the UFC to book the fight. It's very smart on Conor's part to do this video, especially if he hasn't got the fight signed yet, because he's got everyone riled up. And if the UFC comes out and says this fight's not happening, it looks kind of bad on the UFC, because it's like, why isn't he just fighting Chandler? Why isn't he fighting him? I believe he would fight, tomorrow if he could, but obviously he can't do that. I think a lot of what's stopping him is the UFC wanting to make sure that there's a big chance that he could win, and I do think that could happen with Chandler. You got to give Conor props for building up this fight. He did a pretty good job. Both of them did a great job on The Ultimate Fighter, promoting the fight, because he's just at a place in life where he's not fighting to be a champion. I think, this really falls in the place of him just being a prize fighter. He wants to put on shows. Yes, he wants to win, but it's more about him satiating his urge to fight. The guy, he came from nothing. He came from a place in Ireland which was somewhat of a ghetto. Not a ghetto, but it certainly was low class. Probably struggled a lot growing up, and he is ultimately a fighter that needs to do it to satiate himself as a person. He sat on the sideline for 3 years after a horrible injury. That leg snap was one of the worst I've ever seen. And, I think it's driving him mad not being able to fight and put on shows for people. He is worth, like $600 million or something like that. But at the end of the day, these guys don't really do it. Once you've reached a certain level, they don't do it for money. They do it for themselves, and they do it to prove to themselves that they are fighters and that they can fight and that they're one of the best in the world. Here's the thing, that the best in the world thing, the pound for pound thing, it really kind of is fake. It doesn't really exist, because everyone's always evolving and growing. So if you think about someone at the 155-pound division, they could be the best in the world on that night, but at the end of the day, there's someone out there that could beat them on a certain night. So bringing it back to Conor McGregor, I really do think that the Michael Chandler fight will happen. It's just a matter of when. And we're all, like I said, waiting on the edge of our seat to find out when it's going to happen. Now, I do think that if he fights Chandler, it probably will be either UFC 300 or it could be International Fight Week. But here's the thing, guys. He has so much ring rust. And this is something we saw from Colby. I think one of the real reasons Colby kind of froze up was because of the pressure. There was a lot of pressure on him, and he had a lot of ring rust. You could see that. You could visually see his age. He's 35 years old. I think that's about how old Conor is too, and it just seemed to be really affecting how he was fighting. Here's the interesting thing about the Conor McGregor-Michael Chandler fight. They're both dealing with ring rust. And this is a perfect matchup for both guys. If Chandler beats Conor, it's like, he gets a great payday and he gets to beat a former champ. If Conor wins, he's back in the running of contenders. But here's the thing that a lot of people have been saying, which I really do agree with, is that if they fight at 185 pounds, there's no why. Like, why are they fighting at 185? Now, if they fight at 170, it's, they could possibly be in line for a title fight. But at 185, there's no way that Conor McGregor is going to fight, a Sean Strickland or a Dricus du Plessis, because these guys are just way above his his true weight class. His true weight class is 145, and I think, you know, that's where he shines the most. We've seen that. That's where he fought majority of his fights. The most spectacular thing about the dude, though, is that, you know, he's fought at 145, he's fought at 155, he's fought at 170, and he's got wins at all of those weight categories. Now, if he could get a win at weight at 185, it would be awesome. And I do think that if Conor and Chandler fight at 185, I'm gonna dare to say that Conor wins. I think it's an extremely competitive fight. This fight business is not really a career. It's an opportunity, like Dana always says. It's an opportunity to showcase your skills. You get about a 20-year window, and, you know, that's really it. But I do want to sort of break down what I think will happen in the McGregor-Chandler fight. I do think that McGregor has gotten into Chandler's skin. I really do. I think how long he's made him wait, how he's treated him during the whole process. He's kind of treated him just like, meh, you know, whatever, I'll fight you. 185, you do what you're told. And I think this truly has affected Chandler. I think Chandler is shook. I think when he gets to that fight and the millions of people watching, the thousands of people in the stands will really play a big role in how Chandler performs. At this point, all the pressure is kind of on Chandler. Conor hasn't had a fight since Poirier. And, you know, great. He beat Poirier once, and then Poirier beat him twice. You know, the way I see it, it's kind of even with those guys. They're very evenly matched, and that's why the fights were so competitive. But with Chandler and McGregor, it's like, what are they fighting for? Are they fighting for title contention? Are they fighting for bragging rights? Or are they just both fighting because they know it's a big payday and, you know, they want to put on a show? And I think that's what this fight is all about. It's really the why is to say he beat McGregor and to get a giant payday. For Conor, it's an entranceway back into his status as an elite fighter. But you got to think about Chandler. Chandler is 37 years old. He's 2-3 in the UFC. So if he beats Conor, he'll be 3-3 in the UFC. If Conor wins, you know, he beat a top 155 pounder, but then it's like, okay, if he beats Chandler, what does he do? He goes back down to 155, he goes to 170. What is it? This fight makes most sense at 170, because if they win at 170, they can both go back down to 155. They're closer to their normal weight. I think if they fight at 185, it's just like a complete just performance-based reason. They're both essentially coming back. They're both sort of coming back from these long layoffs. I think Chandler's last fight was against Tony Ferguson. And as we know now, Tony Ferguson is a shell of what he used to be. Who has Chandler even beat? He's beat a washed-up Tony Ferguson and a washed-up Dan Hooker. Now his fight with Justin Gaethje, Charles Oliveira, those were very competitive fights, and that's why we hold Chandler in such a high esteem. But I do feel like the why and the reason for this fight needs to be established. The best part about this whole fight, though, is that it's really a win-win for the UFC. If Chandler beats McGregor, I do think that Conor will retire. If Conor beats Chandler, not only does it set Chandler up for life, but it puts him back in the talks of possible title contention. So who wins in this fight? I'm going to honestly say Conor does, because they both have such sort of explosive styles where they're both really good in the first couple rounds. I do think this fight will be an all-out barn burner. I think it'll be fireworks from the start. So I'm very intrigued by who will win this fight and where they go after this fight. We've never seen somebody come back after the age of 35 and really make a big comeback, aside from, you know, early Randy Couture, Daniel Cormier, you know, Yoel Romero, but he never really had a great win streak. He was an absolute dominator, but he didn't win a title or even fight for a title. Will Chandler overcome the pressure that is Conor McGregor? And will Conor McGregor come back in dominant fashion after years off? A quick, short little video here for you guys. I just want to know, who do you think will win, Conor or Chandler? And does this fight even happen at this point? Anyways, guys, thanks for watching, and talk to you next video. Peace.